Yes, they have. And I don't know if this has been around a lot of social media, but I've seen it a couple of times. Tonight at 9 o'clock, people are going out into their front yards or on their balconies, holding a flashlight into the sky for 8 minutes and 45 seconds. So all over Los Angeles, please join in if you can. And now I'm going to switch gears a little bit and talk about what it is we are going to talk about this afternoon. It's Wednesday today, and I think it's important that we come into this midweek looking at some really fabulous kids who, some inspired by what's gone on in the last 9 days, one in particular, and then others who are just inspired by something. And that's the point that I'd like us to examine. What sparks this in children, and what can we learn from it? And maybe before we do that, we have a guest with us today. I'll let Dejana introduce her. Thank you. Thank you. Well, I think what we'll start with is we'll play a little clip of a young man who was motivated by this, what's gone on in the last 9 days, and his mother wrote a song that he's performing. So, 12 years old. What an amazing, heartfelt performance. And, uh, he clearly has a God given talent in his voice, but he's also exercising it. Clearly, he's singing often and practicing that. Uh, but I wonder, like, if we were to talk to his parents, what we could find out about the build up to this. Like, how did he come to them? Did they go to him? Those are the things that I'm really curious about. What sparks that in a child? What gets them started? Oh, Dejana, I think you're muted. And I think it's like those kitchen table conversations. I was having a meeting earlier today with Boys and Girls Clubs of Long Beach, the coordinators there. And we were talking about what you can tell about a child's home by the way they talk to other kids, or the way they talk to you in the classroom, or in their case in the after school setting. And the challenge for me comes when you know that a child is hearing all the wrong things about race, or all the wrong things about religion or politics or whatever the topic is, but you can hear in what they're saying to you that what they're expressing is long-term damage. What that played out to adulthood is damaging for them and their community. And to find a way to address that without condemning or denigrating the parents, because there's a very fine line there. And we work with a young man whose name will remain anonymous, because but he had an amazing experience as a very young person, in part because people left him alone, and he had interests that he was able to explore. But when I have conversations about some meaningful areas in life, I worry, because I can hear one of the parents in those conversations, and young people are at a turning point, right? You're going to hear things, and you're either going to start questioning what you're hearing, or it's ingrained enough that you just accept that this is the way life is. I mean, we all grow up thinking that life is what we see around the kitchen table. And then you have another child like this one, whose mother, clearly she wrote a song for him to sing, and it's been so healing for them and all the rest of us. And I so relate, Dejana, to the emotion around it, because it's most of my adult life, my habit has been to get up, turn the news on, and have that going while I'm getting ready in the morning. And right now I'm crying by the time I'm brushing my teeth. So I just can't have the news on right now. I need to read it and know what's happening, but I can't have a constant flow of it the way I used to. But let's look at another. We have a little 10-year-old girl who started a nonprofit because she felt she had a trauma in her life, and art was an important part of her healing process, and she wanted to offer that to other kids. So I think we're just going to show a little still of her right now with the kits that she gives out, because her mother's going to join us on one of the shows in the future, and we can actually ask her some of these questions. But the idea that this child had the idea, and then the parents got behind her and supported it and made sure that it could happen. And something you said earlier, Anne, that I think is so important is that when we hear a child's idea and we say to them, oh, wait till you see what it's like as an adult. That's just not, like, we give them that sort of cynical reaction to their idea, then that builds the cynical muscle for them, and that's not what we want to build. There was an awards show a couple of years ago, or an awards program called Paradigm Awards, and it's for kid inventors. And one of the young women who won for her category, it was the 11 to 13-year-old category. She was 13, and she got up, and in her speech, and in a sweet way, it was not precocious, it was just she said, people say all the time that children are our future, but we're here now, and we have ideas. And I just felt like and her invention was a medical device that it was for testing lung capacity in children with asthma. And she said she realized when her cousin went for her test that she got nervous when she was going there. So she would blow on the device, but not it was constrained because of her nervousness. This little girl developed a dart gun that attaches to an app on the doctor's phone, and because the child's playing a game and shooting the dart at the target, they're giving their all to try and make it happen. And that was a child seeing another child struggle and coming up with a solution. You're muted, Dejana. Really? Is that they don't feel heard, or they don't feel that they're being heard and action is taken. And I think about with children the multi-layered impact of letting them be heard. For the most part, children who are abused don't feel they have anyone they can talk to. That's what makes them susceptible to abusers, because the well, it's a whole other subject I would get into on that, but I think if children know that they can express their ideas, express their anger and their grief in productive ways, if they can sit with the adults in their life. And when I was talking to those Boys and Girls Club folks today too, we were talking about the fact that school is no longer just an educational system. It's also a place where children are being raised, because there are a lot of kids, for multiple reasons, parents who have to work many jobs in order to keep the roof over their head, are not actively involved in the raising the way they would have been several decades ago. Sometimes it's really just a one line from someone that has an impact on a child too. If you hear what they're saying and you give them one little bit of encouragement, most children, they hold on to that encouragement. of you, is there anyone that you would point to from your childhood who was the person or the influence that sort of propelled you? Well, your dad was very progressive because that is really not the typical way children are raised, to especially question your parents. And, I adore my parents. I'm very close with my whole family. But that wasn't, we were a different generation, right? You didn't question the church and you didn't question the doctor and you didn't. So, all of what's gone on in this last 20, 30 years of corruption in each of those areas at different times has left my generation with a sort of like, whoa, wait a minute. Those were all the stables. But what I did have in my immediate family was never a question about whether we were loved or not loved. We knew, and that gives you a base in life, I think, and I share the reality of, well, I wasn't the only child, but I did have I was 9 years old when my baby sister was born. And so we weren't particularly close as children, but now we are incredibly close. But for me, school was not, I did not do well. From when I came home from school in first grade, I told my mother I wasn't going back. We sat still all day. Like that, there was no such thing as kindergarten in the country. First time I remember really being engaged in a class and wanting to be there and wanting to study was in an English class in ninth grade, where our English instructor had us listen to Bob Dylan songs and analyze them. I thought I was in heaven. And that was the first time I thought, but it still took me, I was in my 50s when I went back to university. Like I did my PhD very late in life because I just had no, I first of all didn't think I was a good student, but it was that English teacher. At least it's not a given that you're going to go to university, especially again in a rural area. So it was a long time between those encouraging words in high school and my getting myself back to university. And Dejana, how does that? Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Anne. Well, in that story, Dejana really explained the first day that I met you and what I witnessed that day that just blew me away. And I think I've mentioned it before, but there was a little girl in the class that you were working with who was just so antsy. And you had her running to this pole and that pole. And by the time you got her back, she was settled down. You said, if I give her a little bit of running time, she comes back and settles into the class. And I wondered, as a parent, how does it impact? Because I see you with your kids, and I just think, oh, if only we could just get that approach to parenting out there in the world. And I think that's what you're explaining where that comes from. But talk about the impact it has on you as a parent. great philosophy. What a great way to sort of wind up this conversation, too, because I think what we've talked about today is really giving kids space and listening to them, actively listening, giving them time and really uninterrupted space to explore things, and then let them question everything. I love that philosophy. That's really, I think, key to a lot of it. That letting kids know that it's okay to question even me. It is. Friday. Okay. Thank you, Anne, for joining us. Bye.